Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Welcome aboard, everyone, to another episode of Democracy Exchange with the Depot. My name is Connor Hand. I'm your researcher and co-host today. And today we're joined by an excellent guest, Mr. Zack Space. Mr. Space was a lawyer and a congressional representative from 2007 to 2011. In 2018, he ran a close competition for Ohio State Auditor, and since 2019 has been the founder and president of Sunday Creek Horizons, an advocacy and consultancy group based in Southeastern Ohio. Mr. Space, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Connor. It's a pleasure.
All right. Well, we're going to jump right in. For our first question, we'd like to know a little bit more about you. What motivated you for a career in law and later to run for U.S. Congress?
So, my father was a lawyer, and the truth is there was, I guess, an implicit expectation that that's the direction I would go, and I followed it. I loved my dad. In fact, I adored my father. And I practiced law for 20 years with him in a small private practice in Tuscarawas County in Dover, Ohio. I always was interested in politics. My father, again, Socrates was his name. He was local Democratic Party boss, so I was exposed to politics from a young age. I saw how politics is supposed to work at its most fundamental level, at the grassroots level. And saw that what you could do in politics from a policy perspective, and was eventually drawn into that. I ran once when I was a 29-year-old young lawyer, ran for state rep unsuccessfully, swore it off, politics that is, until about 15 years later, and decided to run for Congress. And that decision was in large part motivated by, again, I watched the process. I knew politics. I knew our congressman at that time. And he cast a vote or two that I really, really fundamentally disagreed with. I also recognized that politically he had some big issues to deal with. He ended up getting indicted, frankly, which is one of the major reasons I got elected, in all honesty. But I saw an opportunity. I actually tried to fill that opportunity with somebody else. I tried with 3 or 4 people that I knew back home that I thought could beat him. Nobody wanted to take him on, so I decided to do it myself, and became the accidental congressman. That's a term that had been given to me by a political writer in D.C. after that happened, who said I would only serve 1 term. I proved him wrong. I served 2 before I got beat. So I was 4 years in Washington representing the former Ohio 18th Congressional District. It's was a large, no longer exists because we now only have 15 districts in Ohio. But a large Appalachian district. Biggest city was Zanesville with about 25,000 people. So very large in terms of its geographic dimensions, and represented many of the challenges you might expect from an Appalachian community. Also holds, and to this day holds, enormous opportunity and potential. Maybe we can get into that during the podcast today, but I think my venture into politics was in large part based upon a fundamental understanding I've had of the process, coupled with what became a strong desire to make change. And it worked, at least for a while.
Oh, and your run is a great example of checking government and being part of that active citizenry.
Right.
And we will talk a bit later about a lot of the challenges and potential opportunities from communities in that district and others nearby. But talking a little bit more about your time in Congress, what were some of the biggest takeaways you brought back from the House?
So, I thought I understood politics at the national level when I went to Congress, and I soon found out that I didn't. It was a whole new game, and I went from being the law director of the city of Dover to a member of Congress. So it's kind of like going from barking dog complaints to Obamacare.
Yeah.
So it was a big jump for me. Some of the takeaways on the positive side, I was genuinely impressed with the character of most of the members I served with. Obviously, the composition of Congress has changed significantly in the last 15 years. But I found most of them wanted to do the right thing. They were motivated by the right issues, largely speaking. and decent people. That's a good thing, right? That's a good place to start any conversation with. I also found that there were things about Congress that I didn't know that I didn't like. And one of them was the pressure that's on members of Congress to raise money for their political campaigns and how it in many ways corrupts the process. It essentially subjectifies what should be an objective legislative process in meaningful ways, and that's unhealthy. I came in on a wave. 2006 was a wave Democratic year, and I was washed out on a wave. 2010, which is a big Republican year. And so I guess I learned that it really doesn't matter how good you are, how hard you work, what you do, what you don't do. You are, in many cases, at least for districts like mine at that time, subject to circumstances over which you had very little control.
Yeah, so your district, you'd say, was very purple and kind of went with a lot of those ebbs and flows.
It was, and now it's very red. And I don't know if it'll always be. I don't think it'll always be red. But at one point it was real blue, and then it became purple, and now it's red, and who knows what the future might hold.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think, one of the great blessings of our state is it tends to go in different directions, and it's not always consistently in one path.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that diversity is a good thing. Diversity of thought. I worry about that phenomenon continuing to happen in the future, given the polarization that we're seeing in Congress right now, and given some of the institutional structures that have contributed to that polarization. It's dangerous, and we've got to figure out a way to break through that.
And so talking about that polarization, I think one of the biggest examples of that is the government shutdown we currently find ourselves in. When you were in Congress, you were part of the Blue Dog Coalition, which, among other things, really advocated for fiscal responsibility. Do you find any chances of kind of getting out of this cycle of government shutdowns and budget issues in the future?
Yeah. I mean, there's a pathway out. There are several pathways out, right? I think that the current shutdown's probably going to last. If you're asking me, to predict, I'd say at least another 2 weeks, probably till the end of this month, maybe even a little farther than that. But the question is, can we, avoid this in the future? The easiest way to avoid it in the short term would be for Congress to pass legislation that would require just a straight continuing resolution until issues are resolved. If there's a stalemate, the longer term and more important and productive resolution has to do with I don't want to make this political, because obviously it's political, but it runs across the political spectrum. I think we need more moderation in Congress. Mm-hmm. I think we need more sensibility. I think we need a lot less polarization and extremism. And I think that's in large part driven by gerrymandering, not exclusively, but it's a big part of the problem. So I think there are some internal structural reforms that could be made. I mean, as we speak, the Supreme Court is contemplating whether to potentially hold the part of the Voting Rights Act that requires that gerrymandering or redistricting account for racial makeup be thrown out. I mean, that would be, in my opinion, a devastating decision. But the truth is, we should be going the other direction on this, rather than, Texas and Indiana, probably Ohio, trying to gerrymander their seats to get more Republicans, in California, trying to gerrymander in New York, gerrymandering its state to get more Democrats. That is precisely the wrong direction we should be going. We should be, drawing up these districts without regard to voter files, without regard to political careers and aspirations, and with total regard for the needs and the concerns of the people. And that seems to have been lost in this process. So I know it's a rambling answer to a pretty straightforward question, but I think in the long run, we have to figure out a way to become more moderate and engage in civil discourse and put aside the immaturity that both sides have displayed radically over the last couple of years.
And I think we see that a lot in trying, I mean, as you mentioned, all those states trying to expand their majorities in those states. When you ran for state auditor in 2018, you made gerrymandering one of your primary campaign issues.
It was my biggest campaign issue. The auditor sat on the redistricting committee, and it can be done. I mean, if you allow legislators to decide their districts without any guardrails, I don't care if they're Democrats or Republicans, it's going to become an entirely politicized process. That's just the way the process works. There are some states that have taken the political actors out of the equation, and those states have produced more moderate candidates.
Recently in Ohio, we had that on the ballot. I believe it was just last year. It was an issue to try to establish a more nonpartisan committee for electoral reform. Do you think that would be a solution for Ohio?
I do. Ohio has implemented measures in the past that were designed to help moderate the process, but they have crumbled in the face of political aspiration, and the Supreme Court has not. We did for a while. They did for a while, but when the Supreme Court changed, they basically have green-lighted the changes that I think we're going to see in the upcoming months.
Yeah, I think it was back in 2022 they were striking down a couple maps, but now it's down to a final deadline before the redistricting commission's added into that.
Yeah.
So, next year when the 2026 midterms happen, extremely competitive, do you think it's going to come down to that redistricting committee that's already been established?
Yeah, I think they're going to draw new lines, and I think they'll probably do what Texas and what Indiana are doing, and largely at the behest of the administration in Washington, to game the 26 elections. And I don't know what's going to. And again, I don't come at this from a purely partisan perspective. I mean, I'm a Democrat, but I have many of my clients, many of the policymakers that I work with are Republicans. I find them to be good people, genuine. This is really what I was hoping we would pivot into, Connor. So,
sure.
And I spoke about this a little earlier today, and what I'm seeing, and I used to be part of that political warrior class, right? It's like us versus them, and that's the wrong approach. That doesn't work, and it's actually exacerbating the divisions that we see in this country that are so dangerous. I think that what we need to start doing is understanding in a bipartisan way, and you do this through communication, real communication, not social media, right? Not electronic communication. Understanding where we're coming from, where each other are coming from. And if you take the issues that are dominating the headlines today, let's say crime. We've got the president sending troops in various cities to fight crime. Immigration. We've got masked immigration agents jumping out of vans and separating families. Trimming the bloated federal bureaucracy. The tariffs and economics. The American economy and what tariffs are good for. How they might be able to help. You think about those and more. Name any one of the Donald Trump signature initiatives. I can make a really strong case that every one of those initiatives is well-intentioned and well-motivated. In fact, I agree with them in terms of the anticipated end. We all want to. Most of us want a secured border. I don't know anybody who wants an open border. We should know who's coming in and out. The problem is, we're so divided now that when Democrats, all they do is complain about Donald Trump's tactics, masked agents jumping out of vans and separating families, what those Trump supporters hear is, you're for open borders. When Democrats attack Trump on the tariffs, by the way, I think tariffs can be a really effective policy. If properly implemented. But when you just blanket attack the tariffs, what a Trump supporter hears is, you're not for us, you're for offshoring jobs. When you go after, Elon Musk for, holding a chainsaw up when he talks about cutting federal bureaucracy. Trump voters hear you don't care about government waste. When you go after Trump for sending troops in the cities, you don't care about crime. That's not true. We do care about all those things. But that's what they hear. And so we see them, when a Democrat sees a Republican standing up for Trump's immigration means, we see that we don't see the end. We see the means. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is, at the end of the day, the two parties in their various platforms are really not that far apart when it comes to the ends. We all want the same things, with a couple of minor and sometimes major, but predominantly, we want the same things. We disagree on how we get there. And if the Democrat Party were smart, they would acknowledge that. They would acknowledge that Donald Trump is right about X, Y, or Z. But he's wrong about his methodology. And if Democrats were smart enough to position themselves as aligned with Trump on the ends, but let's debate the means, I think they would be able to touch the nerves that matter with the American people. They haven't been able to do that. And I look at how I interact with the people that I work with in Southern Ohio. Our firm does work across the Appalachian region. We're doing some great things, and we're doing great things because of the work of Republican office holders and Republican members of the community. I mean, almost all my clients and the people I work with, again, they don't agree with me ideologically, but we don't talk about those ideological differences. We talk about the things that we agree on. We all can agree that our schools should be properly funded, that when a kid is in trauma emotionally, he should have some place to go, that our downtowns should be revitalized and serve as a sense of communal pride for us. We all agree on those things, and so those are the things we focus on. And what I'm here to tell you is that, all this arguing, all this bickering, all this vitriol, all this perceived hatred, much of which is being driven by digital media, in my opinion, it's all misplaced. It's like I think we all want the same things in the end.
And we're just arguing over that methodology.
That's right.
But to pivot a bit on your advocacy and your consultancy group there, you helped found and you've been president of Sunday Creek Horizon since 2019. You've been working on that advocacy and consultancy for Southeastern Ohio. And as you mentioned, especially rural and Appalachian communities. What are some of the biggest issues that you see in those communities today?
So there are long-standing issues that I lump into the category of challenges that you probably know about, you've heard about, right? We have an opioid addiction issue. We have above average poverty rates. A lot of statistics that you don't want to lead in, we lead in our state. In fact, if Southeastern Ohio were its own state, it would be like the second poorest state in the country. By the typical demographics. That's what everybody hears, and unfortunately, that's what many people think about when they think about our region. But I'm here to tell you that while those things are challenges and we are working really hard to overcome them, and we are overcoming them, the opportunities that exist down there are massive. First of all, there's this organically grown outdoor recreational economy that has spawned over the course of the last 15 years. We have visitors that want to come to our region to recreate because it's beautiful, it's breathtaking. You guys up here have beautiful flat cornfields, it's great. But down there, it's got great character.
It's a little different. The elevation's a little bit higher.
Yeah, so people want to recreate, they want to fish in our rivers and they want to hike in our woods and our forests. And that can serve as a genesis for breathing new life into our downtowns. 4 million people came into Hocking County last year from outside of Hocking County to recreate. Now, what we have an obligation to do is to make sure that outdoor recreational play is managed properly. And by the way, it's not just Hocking County. So all the counties in the region now are playing in this. We want to be able to make sure it doesn't put too much stress on housing prices. But we also want to figure out ways to push these visitors into our community centers, like our downtowns. That can be a fundamental building block for the recreation of a sense of community in these downtowns. It has been lost in many of them. But I invite you to come down and visit Marietta, visit Chillicothe, Somerset. Some of these small towns it'll knock your socks off. You won't believe how amazing it is. We want to do that throughout the whole region. So the outdoor recreational economy is one way that we think we can do it, but by no means is that the only way. So we happen to be in a location on the planet where two of the most prolific shale gas formations overlap, and that's the Utica and Marcellus shale plays overlap in eastern Ohio. And they have been producing an abundance of it's one of the largest plays in the world. So we've got all this natural gas, and that can be good for our country. We've got to make sure it's managed properly and regulated properly. But we're figuring out now that the produced water, this is just one example, the produced water from the natural gas extraction that's been going on in the Marcellus and Utica shale plays can actually holds lithium. So we're working with a company that can extract that lithium from the produced water before it gets injected into the deep deposits, the deep wells that it has to go into,
right,
and create a new industry around creating lithium carbonate for EV batteries for cars or for battery storage facilities. I'm working with Ohio University right now on a technology associated with converting coal as a feedstock, using coal as a feedstock for building materials. And the first iteration will be decking board, like Trex decking board. Right. It'll be made from coal instead of wood pulp. And we think at scale, and we're working with some private capital investors on this, at scale, we think we can produce decking board that's actually performs better than Trex or TimberTech, the current incumbent industry leaders, that will actually can be sold at a lower price point. So that could create a whole new industry just around decking board in our region. Coal can also be used as a feedstock for PVC piping, graphene for battery, wallboard, floorboard, ceiling tiles or roofing tiles, coal tar pitch. There is an abundance of products that can be made from coal. And here's why that's important. Our region has a strong history of coal, and the importance of coal transcends its economics in our region. It's cultural. My grandfather came over here from Greece, and he got a job in the coal mines. And a lot of people in our region can directly trace someone in their family who's either now working or used to work in the coal mines. So it's very important culturally to this region. Coal no longer is in favor for generation of electricity largely because it's been displaced by natural gas generation, which is a lot more affordable. This repurposes coal, gives it new purpose, and allows those coal miners that used to mine coal now do something different because the power plants have shut down. So we've got these exciting and environmentally friendly uses of coal. We've got these byproducts of the fracking industry that we think are going to create industrial opportunities. And believe it or not, Southern Ohio is playing a major role in the new world of advanced modular nuclear reactors. There's a community in Southern Ohio, Piketon, that housed the Department of Energy gaseous diffusion plant during the Cold War. Some of the biggest buildings on the planet were built in Pike County. Pike County was consuming more electricity than New York City, more electricity than the rest of the state of Ohio for decades.
Because of those generators.
Because they were enriching uranium for our nuclear arsenal during the Cold War.
Okay.
And they did it successfully. We won the Cold War, right? It was because of the people in Piketon. Well, we're trying to figure out, the community's trying to figure out, okay, how can we repurpose this massive facility? Well, along comes this new nuclear technology associated with small modular reactors, where in 10 years they'll be building reactors that are the size of this room, that you can put them on the back of a flatbed truck, and you can haul them anywhere in the world and put them behind the meter and power industrial parks or hospital systems or universities. That's the future of energy, and it runs through Piketon, Ohio, which is a small county in Southern Ohio. So we have all these exciting developments around energy, around outdoor recreation. We've got the workforce necessary for this as a holdover from the old Piketon stuff. It's a really exciting picture. We're seeing a lot of capital investors now circle in our region, from AI infrastructure, data centers, new natural gas generation facilities to power those data centers, fuel fabricators and recyclers from the nuclear side. I'm going on and on, but I'm passionate about it.
There's a lot of economic development going on.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we're also catching up to the rest of the world when it comes to our connectivity. Congress appropriated almost $1 billion just for Ohio to build out its access to broadband. Right. And what we're going to see in your lifetime, probably in my lifetime, Connor, there's going to come a time when you're going to want to move down there because you're going to have all the conveniences you have in Columbus or Cleveland or Oak Harbor, but you're also going to have internet. You're going to be able to work from a house that you can afford. You're going to be able to walk out your backyard and take a hike through the woods, or get your boat out and take a cruise on the river. Southeastern Ohio's stock is rising, and we are overcoming those challenges. But more importantly, we're seizing the opportunities, and we're doing that as a region because they're coming together. Schools are coming together, businesses are coming together, healthcare providers are coming together. We're working together as a unit as opposed to provincial actions as we've always done in the past. We're speaking with a louder voice, and policymakers are listening.
So I see you're really good at selling Southeastern Ohio, but how is your consultancy group ensuring that nobody's left behind in these developments?
So it's really important that that's a great question. And we're starting with addressing both our access to education, access to mental health treatment, access to drug and alcohol treatment, which has been an issue for us in the past, like it has everywhere, but it's hit us harder because of our poverty levels. So we're working with labor unions. We're working with a lot of public schools, identifying career paths for kids. We're working with the Appalachian Children Coalition, which I mentioned previously, that is designed to, help provide resources for kids in psychological trouble. It's an issue we've had for a long time in our region that's gone unaddressed. So we're actively working at both ends of this equation. It's a great question. We see opportunities. We want to grasp them. But we want those opportunities to be for our kids. And the best way to do that is make sure that kids aren't falling through the cracks. And between the Appalachian Children Coalition, the Coalition of Rural Appalachian Schools, there are a lot of people, and others, there are a lot of people in this region that are actively trying to make sure this next generation is on track.
What barriers and roadblocks have you run into trying to scale up all of these developments in Southeastern Ohio?
So, money is the biggest problem because we don't have a lot of it down there. A lot of the money that's generated in Southeastern Ohio over the course of time has left the region. That's another issue, really. So we've been, and this is one of the reasons that people in this region are distrustful of both outsiders and institutions. It's well placed. So if you look at our history going back to the early 1800s, we were exploited by outsiders for our iron ore, for our clay, for our timber, for our coal, now for our natural gas. And what we want to do is we want to create a dynamic where this money stays in the region. And we've got some really good operators on the natural gas side that are investing in the region. We're seeing enormous opportunities out of some of the new technologies I mentioned. That like Consol Energy was a giant coal company based in it's now Core Energy. They merged with Arch to make Core. It's one of the largest non-state-owned coal companies in the world, based in western Pennsylvania. They're investing in our region, and that for us. That's the key. The history has been, they come in, they take our resource. There's a boom in our economy. The resource gets depleted or goes out of style. They leave with all their profits, and we're left in disarray until the next boom comes along. We want to break that cycle. We want to break the boom-bust cycle. We want to become self-reliant. That's why I love the outdoor recreational play. That allows us to use our natural resources to benefit us. And, it's it's developing in ways that I didn't see 5 or 6 years ago. Things are picking up steam all across the board down there. It's really exciting.
I'm extremely glad that that's working out. And so for like a consultancy group and advocacy group such as yours, do you typically rely on federal or state grants, or is it typically private investing at this point in the stage?
So, it's our clients that rely on these funds, not us. So typically it's a matter of providing, like when we do work for local governments, we do a lot of work for counties and cities. And these communities have historically not been able to even hire an economic development professional or someone to identify grants because they don't have enough money to fill potholes and fund their police departments. The revenues have been a problem. And what we do for these communities is we provide them with capacity. We understand what their needs are. We look to both state and federal sources, identify potential grant funds, and then help them apply for those funds and execute on those grants. Our work on behalf of hospital systems is a little different. It's not necessarily going after grant funds as much as it is bringing justice to how Medicare and Medicaid do payments to providers. I mean, it's ridiculous how rural hospitals are discriminated against in terms of reimbursements from Medicaid. And I mean, it's a complicated story, but because so few of our patients in our hospitals have commercial insurance that they get through work, most of them are either Medicare or Medicaid, it's really hard for them to survive. That's the reason many rural hospitals have died. Federal policy has not changed to adjust for the fact that our communities don't have these big steel mills anymore that they used to, where everybody had private insurance, and that's why these hospital systems are dying. So we're trying to raise awareness among policymakers around things like that need to change policy.
And to help keep those rural hospitals open that we've seen shut down
recently.
It's really,
really important. Yeah.
No, it's extremely important. So, I mean, you mentioned Oak Harbor earlier from where I come from, and that's also a rural spot. Like the nearest hospital for a lot of our citizens in our town is easily 30 minutes away. Mm-hmm. And so it's definitely an issue that rural communities face all the time. And I'm glad to see that your advocacy and consultancy group is working to address that gap with other community partners.
And we are actually working with some outside of Appalachia too, independent systems, rural systems as well. You know, when a rural hospital system shuts down, it not only does it deprive the community of access to care, which is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
It also eliminates what's usually the largest employer in the community. And all that revenue that the community generated from income taxes is now gone. And when a big hospital system comes in and acquires these smaller rural systems, over the course of 5 to 7 years, they typically reduce the employment in those hospitals by half. So the biggest employer might have been employing 1,200 people 7 years ago, gets acquired by one of the big players, and now they only have 600 people working there. Well, what that means is 600 people lost their jobs, and the income tax revenue from 600 employees that used to flow to the city is gone. And if you take out the biggest employer in these communities or compromise the amount of employees at the biggest employer, it has a devastating impact on our ability, and it creates a cycle downward.
Right.
We're trying to reverse that and create cycles upward.
Well, I'm extremely glad to hear that you're making a lot of progress and making a lot of big moves in Southeastern Ohio. But for our listeners who are spread across the state and they've heard about your career through this podcast, they've heard about the things you're doing, what would you say? What advice would you give them for advocating for greater change or even running for elected office?
So, you know, the one thing I want to mention today is I'm becoming increasingly concerned about the faith that people have in the democratic process. And specifically, I reference the electoral process. I'm on a board of an organization called the Democracy Defense Project. Mm-hmm. It's a 8-state organization. Every state has at least one Democrat and one Republican on the board. I'm the Democrat in Ohio, and Ken Blackwell, former Secretary of State, is the Republican on this board. And you ask about issues. This is an important issue, and Ken and I have come together as a part of this process to provide reassurances to the public that elections are not rigged. They are not rigged in America. The voting machines are not compromised. You know, illegal immigrants are not voting and skewing the results of elections. Election fraud is exceedingly rare. It rarely I don't know if it's ever impacted a race as like a statewide race. It's so rare. But there's a growing notion that's being propagated by certain politicians who care more about their own political careers or their own political reputations than they do about our democracy. The Democracy Defense Project is designed to bring Republicans and Democrats together to reassure the public that our elections are not rigged, that they are fair, they are transparent, they are efficient, they work. And there's value in that. So Ken Blackwell, by the way, is a great guy. I've gotten to know him. I like him a lot. Mm-hmm. He and I disagree pretty vehemently on almost any policy position, almost all policy positions. He's a conservative Republican. I'm a moderate Democrat, but even at that, there's a big gulf between our ideologies. Difference. But we wholeheartedly agree on this one point. And having, in particular Ken, former Secretary of State, who's a known conservative, stand up in front of a microphone or in front of a TV camera or write an op-ed providing reassurance to the general public that your elections are fair, they're not rigged, despite what you might think, is a big deal. So I bring that issue up at the very front of this question because you had what issues out there, because it's so fundamentally important. People have to have faith in our electoral process, and the Democracy Defense Project is designed to help reinstill that.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. That's about all the time we have. Hopefully voters take your words to heart and we see them at the polls upcoming in next November. My name is Connor Hand. I've been your host and researcher today. I'd like to thank the Depot media team, Thomas Williamson, Julia Amlin, and Bryn Drabeck. And I'd also like to thank our founder and current board member, Robert Alexander. And of course, a thank you to the Marvin Center for letting us host the podcast here. If you would like to see any of our other content, feel free to check out our YouTube, Instagram, and Spotify pages. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope all of you enjoyed it. And if you're interested in finding the video version of this podcast, you can find us on our YouTube page at BGSU Depot. If you'd like to keep up with what we're doing, make sure to follow our Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at BGSU_Depot. Thank you so much, and tune in next time.